Hello, dear friends. Welcome to the East West Show. Name is Jack with G and E TV on the East West Show for many, many years, trying to pay attention to all aspects of life around us. Ever since 2018 started, school shootings, massive school shootings, tend to be on the rise. And with a frequency that much, lots of people calls for different ways to tackle the problem. One of the ways called is that now that we cannot get rid of the gun, we cannot even impose lots of gun control rules, how about we arm everybody, arm every school, right? Now, in terms of arming schools, before you know, you realize that you are turning schools into detention centers. There's no trust, no whatever to talk about, and it is not a school, it's a camp. It's a concentration camp, some kind of like. So today, with me, in talking about the subject, is my dear friend, Mr. Chris Nibby. Though director of Hollywood, he is an archivist. He is also a fighter for justice in my eye. So, sir, welcome to the show.
谢谢你老朋友
Good.
你好
Very good. So your Chinese is doing better, almost better than I am. They are better than mine.
我是中国人
All right, good. And I'm nothing. Anyway, so back to the subject. What is happening now? What you see in your eyes, please.
You see, because always in these kind of situations, the government is overreacting and the people are overreacting because they are filled with, fixated on crime, security, and fearful of an ever-increasing violence around them. So they don't know what to do. So they are imposing strict regulations and security issues on schools, which actually will not help.
I agree with you. I agree only 0.5%. I'm 50%, half of the issue. Because, with this many frequencies, I have some statistics that I remember some numbers. Ever since Sandy Hook school shooting, there had been 239 school shootings. School shooting only. I'm not talking about street shooting, right? On campus, school shooting only, 239 incidents already. And of the 239 incidents, there are 438 kids have died already, right? So it is exactly a moment that we, Americans, have to do something. So in order to do something, people think of, let's move up. Let's arm the schools. Let's arm our teachers, right? So it is a reflection rather than action. Do you agree with me?
It's an overreaction, yes.
Well, I'm not talking about reaction, I'm talking about reflection. It is reflected that way because once you see a problem that big, though, you really have to do something, and the thing you do reflects how bad the situation is. Am I right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So
what we have to do...
So what's the concern?
The concern is that society has to rethink their approach to the whole thing, to the whole culture. It's a change of culture which is required, and we cannot glorify violence. This is basically the issue, because in America, basically, if you look in the media everywhere, everything is glorifying violence, wars, endless wars. Not in America, far away. So they become the nightly entertainment for Americans, and it's not a nation which is guided by peace and harmony. And
yes, you're right. I always agree. As exactly yesterday, 2 days ago, I explained to my friend Ken Hemming. He was on my weekly update, right? I said, it is a clear difference there in between what we should do and what we have to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, by logic, United States, the land of the free, the home of the brave, supposed to be a land that is free of worry, right? It's not only safe, free of no worry. So something like that, right? Now we are facing a time that we have to do something special, something to the extent that may go totally against what we should do. So do you agree, given into consideration the fact that we are facing the time we're facing, please? And
Yes.
then we come back to find out the root causes. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as a fact that we see, as facts we see already, schools are now, you're talking about on-campus police officers. Right? You are pretty soon you will be talking about armed teachers, right? Principals or deans or whoever. And you will pretty soon talking about with the Congress money, there are more hires of security officers. Do you think that's right?
No.
Why not?
It may be it may look right, but it isn't right. Because you see, it starts with the general concept of families educating their children and society educating the children that violence is not the answer. Also, the society has to be watchful because it is obvious that in the case of the shooter in Florida, the boy who had come to attention numerous times, not only to the families around him, but also to the police. So these things have to be followed up and checked out, and mentally disturbed people have to be reported and checked. You cannot allow them to even be close to a gun.
All right. Okay, I agree. I agree. I do agree with you. So there's no problem in that whole area. I want to give you a historical example. 1941, December 7th, Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, right? Right after that, as our response, we put the Japanese Americans into detention center, into detention camps, right? Were we doing the right thing? Of course not.
No.
Or of course
Overreaction.
Overreaction, of course not. But given the time, at that very moment, though, that was the right thing to do. Do you think so?
No, but it looked as the right thing, but it was totally wrong.
No, I know. I agree with you. But do you agree with me, given the time point? Given the time point, Americans wanted revenge, and yet we are not ready. The revenge might be misled. So before they are misled to anywhere else, the government did something. Has put the Japanese Americans into concentration camp.
Right.
To slow down the thing. Was that the right thing to do at that very moment, given the consideration?
No.
No. Okay, very good. In that case, or if you confirm it is not a right thing to do at that very moment, though, we will stretch it back to what is right now. When we see 239 now, no more than 239, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more happened already. So 242 now, right? So instance, and among with all the 242, there are 438 now. 440 died already. So, do you think it is the time we do something?
They have been doing something because schools now have metal detectors, electronic surveillance systems, and they have
They search school bags.
campus police who is checking them. But, just think about a kid goes to school and is being exposed to all these things. it creates, it traumatizes the kids in a way, and also it does not. This is not a free society anymore.
When I was little, right, every time I fell, my mom, even next to me, would never pull me up. She would say, "Get up on your own feet. Get up yourself," unless I was seriously hurt, something like that, right? Okay. It was not many years later did I learn a term called the cost of growing. So do you think it is right to call what we do now the cost of growing, please?
Yes.
So, in other words, we're doing the right thing. We're paying what is to be paid as a tuition. Am I right?
Yeah, but not by turning schools into basically detention camps.
If we had to, we had to. If we had to, we had to. For a short time being, at this very moment, we want to make sure they are alive, right?
But
even though in many cases their freedom might be taken for a little bit.
But obviously it doesn't help. Otherwise there wouldn't be any shooting, because by the standards prevailing today in many public schools, where security is very tight and kids are observed and challenged for very little infractions. Usually before, when you did something in school, the biggest deal was that you had to go to the office of the principal. Today you're confronted with a policeman who handles you like a juvenile criminal. He does not handle you like a kid which needs to be reasoned with. And,
all right.
And there is an aspect of violence. You see, there is the aspect of violence. Now, there's violence, and now we are countering it with another kind of violence.
All right, my dear friends, today with me, this discussion about schools or detention centers is my good friend, Chris Nebe, and he is sharing us with some facts. I believe do you or do you not agree is one thing. To look at the facts in a serious eye is the other, right? In other words, to bring ourselves up to date of what has been wrong, what has been happening, it is rather important. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, my good friend, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the discussion entitled Schools or Detention Centers. Joining me, my good friend, Chris Nebe, is a Hollywood director. He is also an archivist, and in my eye, he's a fighter for justice. For many shows, he and I kind of spearheaded to the problem to find the root causes. In finding the root causes, we understand the problem, not only what's happening, why it's happening, how to prevent it from happening. So, welcome back to the show, my dear friend. Okay, now, let's see the facts. Let's talk about the facts first. So, when we say schools or detention centers, we must have a handful of facts, right? What facts do you have?
You mean facts?
What do you see? Yeah, schools. Yeah, about schools, about nowadays schools.
Yeah, they have. It's not anymore this relaxed atmosphere of a school. It's supervised, and the people are victims of an overreaching and overbearing police state, where kids are treated as suspects and criminals. Nobody is addressing the issue of reforming society, which is morally bankrupt, because because of an ever disenfranchised and impoverished public, the whole situation has been shifted, and violence is being responded to with another kind of violence. That's not the right way to handle this. I think if you would address, as I said before, find the weak links in your school. Check out what's wrong. That's much more important than to search the bags of students and have endless surveillance, or police officers who may or may not be effective. In the last public school shooting in Maryland, the school resource officer killed the shooter, which is good. In Florida, the police did not.
They hid behind their cars.
They hid behind their cars. So I mean, you know, it's a situation in flux. It's not.
Let me give you some of my take on the issues. We know that without showing lots of respect to our kids, to search their bags, to taser them for some misbehavior, and to put them whatever in the detention office, right? Handcuff them. Those are not the right thing to do, right? That is exactly the tactics we are taking now to make schools safe at a special moment given, right? And of course, for example, you have your belt on and buckled all day long, right? And you have your shoes on all day long, right? Okay, now go to the airport and you have to unbuckle your belt, right? Sometimes you have to pull it out, put it in the bin, right? You have to take your shoes off in the bin. Why? Right? Because given that moment, searching you to make sure the aircraft is safe is more important than you as a man with your dignity. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that is exactly the moment. Now we're into the moment. We have to do something we, by God's sake, we will never wanted to do, and yet we are doing. We have to do. We are so willing to do because we want to protect the kids. So what's wrong with it?
Yeah, but you see, the airport, you will be on that plane.
Yes.
So, and it's a limited, it's focused on a particular thing. There are 98,000 public schools in America, millions of pupils. And as you know, they come and they go. And I don't think you can introduce a rigorous surveillance system as you have in an airport. I think you're dealing with two different things, because
that aircraft takes, for example, 320 passengers, right? For the safety of the 320 passengers, so we have to search each of you, the 320.
Including
the one being searched.
Right.
Right? Now, we're searching schools and make sure that they go to school alive, come back home out of school alive. So for that sake, though, we have to search you, make sure that everybody, including you yourself, is safe, would come home alive. So it has all come to the time point. We are at a special, unfortunately, we came to a special point of time in history that we have to be cruel to ourselves. We have to sacrifice something. Do you think so, my dear friend? I'm really opening myself up. I'm really doing that.
I agree with you, but I think it is just impossible. It's too humongous, too big. There are 98,000 schools, public schools in America.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You have to have an army of officials checking the kids when they come, when they leave. I don't think how this is possible to do it. It's not like an airport where you have a specific way to go and a specific cause. A school is a wide open, different class terms. I mean, basically what you have to do then is put a barbed wire around the school complex, have one entrance, and everybody has to go through this entrance and has to be checked. And like in an airport, you have to do the same thing. That's a huge...
That's exactly, in my word, cause of growing. We as a nation are growing, right? And we have to pay our tuitions to grow. So this is the price we pay. Because we misconducted in the past. Well, we'll talk about that when we come back later on, right? Okay. Now, we're talking about for that we have to pay now. Do you think so?
But you see, how come that this is a specific American situation? There are no such things happening in Europe, or if they happen, very rarely.
Exactly.
So this is a cultural thing. So the control has to begin at home. It has to start with the parents. But if many of the kids come already from impoverished and disenfranchised, abusive and drug-addicted families, you don't have even the home that should give them the security and the feeling of empathy, fairness, equality. You have the racial situation, you have people of color. I mean, the country is totally confused, and the country has to come to grips with itself, and you cannot do this by enforcing violence with counter-violence. That's not the way to do it.
I see your point. And you're saying that it doesn't make any sense to counter violence with counter violence.
It never.
In other words, to tit for tat, right? So
that doesn't work.
You return the violence with a violence like that. However, I'm thinking about given the moment. Given the moment. Once again, given the moment. Okay, now, and a week or 2 weeks ago, I saw the film of what is that? What is it, Hostels? No, Hostels or something. Hostiles.
Hostiles, yes.
Hostiles, about a doctor of doing his own revenge. Am I that? No, not Hostile.
No, that was a film about Indians.
Death Wish. Death Wish. All right, and then he was shot here to treat himself. He had to do it. Take the bullet out, and then he poured some alcohol there, in clenched teeth, kind of get it out, right? I thought that John McCain in the airport movie, I thought he was the only one doing it, and also Sylvester Stallone was the one doing it. And then it is the third time I saw in a film described, when that scene is described, I thought about how about infection? How about pain? How about a pain to a certain extent, offense, right? To that moment, special moment, to save life, supervises all the rest of it. Right? You have the right over the risk of it. Now we're at the same moment. We want to save the schools, save our kids from being shot on campus. So as what you do to enhance the campus safety, it is a necessity. It is the price of growing. So that is my whole point.
Okay, then have barbed wire and have the army surrounding the school.
Yeah, sure, let's do
with
it.
guns drawn.
Let's do it. Yeah, guns drawn, and even machine guns over the roof, like that kind of thing.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. Okay.
It's a declining society.
Yeah, sure.
If it doesn't come from the
That's
inside.
exactly. You and I both want to call for a next segment to talk about the root causes. What has pushed us this far? Right? Who put us in? Like that kind of thing. All right. So, my dear friend, my lovely audience is welcome to the show. Yet we want to take a wrap for another segment, talking about the fact that we are dealing with our schools like a concentration camps. I do agree. Yet we really have to. Why are we in such a trap? That is the problem. That is more of a significance than the problem itself. So with me is my dear friend, Mr. Chris Nibby. After this very short moment, he and I would lead you into a discussion in finding the root causes of the problems we have. Stay with us, please. Hello, my dear friends, lovely audience, my dear fellow Americans. Welcome back to the Talk About America. Especially, to be more precise, we're talking about American schools. And when you say schools, you're talking about middle school to high school, within that range though. And we have noticed that ever since the Sandy Hook school shooting, there had been 239 added with two more. There are 241 incidents happened. Of the 241, there are more than 340 died already. I mean, all of them are kids, right? So he and I, my friend Chris Nibby, he and I are talking about the fact that are we still making our schools a learning center or detention center, right? It looks that it somehow, somewhere, somehow, it sounds or looks like a detention center. His point was that we shouldn't have done so. My point was that when we are at a point of time that we are forced to do something we do not want to do, then we're forced to. Altogether, we came to a point in agreeing to find out what are the root causes that pushed us into the trap that we do things that we're not willing to do. So, welcome back to the show, my dear friend. So, what's your take about root causes?
I'll give you a perfect example how confused this society is. A 13-year-old kid in school was given detention for exposing the school to possible liability claims for
By
sharing his lunch with a hungry, impoverished
You mean her lunch?
friend. He shared his lunch with somebody who was poor and didn't have lunch, so he shared his lunch.
She, girl, right?
No, it was a man.
Was a boy?
It was a boy. I don't know where. But you see, that shows you something, how confused the society is. I have a friend, he's poor, so I break my bread and give half of him to it. Yes, there is a liability issue, I understand that, because if the kid would get sick, it would be the fault of the school, somebody could sue the school,
kind
et
of like
cetera.
put the school in danger.
Right.
In a school endangerment.
Another one good example is a third grader was suspended for shaving her head in sympathy for a girlfriend who had lost her hair to chemotherapy. You see, this shows
that was such a cute, sympathetic situation.
A gesture of empathy.
Such a cute set of mind.
Or then there was a high school senior who was suspended for saying "bless you" after a fellow
what's wrong with that?
sneezed. I don't know. Bless
Where did you get that information?
Maybe they called it was against the religion or whatever. But you see, there is so much confusion in this society, and new laws and new regulations and violence does not help. A basic change of society. But that means, you see, we have to, for example, how can a family function if the father and the mother have to do jobs in order to feed the family? The kids are unsupervised and the parents are dead tired and do not have time to concentrate on their children, or the children are basically, okay, we have a child, they go to school and they're basically running wild. Of course they are not every child, and it's not the majority. But then when a shooting happens, that is the pinnacle of the confusion of society.
All right.
And I don't see how it can be solved with a barbed wire and an army around the school and having teachers with guns.
We will have time later on when we have the problem in front of our eyes taken care of. We will have to do something of that range. I do agree with you also with the fact that the societal fiber, the societal, called a social fiber, has been changed, has been corrupted. Right. Now, let's get back to the 13-year-old boy who shared the lunch with a unfortunate or unfortunate, less lucky student. Right now, that indicates the extreme left. The extreme left refused to recognize the good deeds, Samaritan mind of people, of act. So they put themselves totally under the law, nothing but the law, but the law. So that the school punished him or chastised him for doing such a good thing, right? The other example, the girl, in order to show her sympathy to her friend who was going under the chemotherapy, having lost all her hair, she says, oh, we look the same, all right? Let me do the same way. I read lots of stories of doing that. A family, somebody doing that, and the whole family could shave, something like that, to make it more acceptable, something like that. And when schools refuse to accept that, the message are delivered. We don't need that. We don't need sympathy. We don't need a Samaritan. We don't need good people. We don't need kind deeds. People are people there. You mind your own business, and you be careful not be hit by law. So is school, so are the kids, and so are the kids taught. So that is, Mr. Nibi, the most dangerous thing in my eyes. Do you agree?
Yes.
And probably that's what's being wrong in the first place.
Right. Or for example, the function of the school resource officers, as they are called, SROs, they of course have a different view of the kids, because for them, they are there to check possible criminal behavior. For example, one CRO punched a 13-year-old student in the face for cutting the cafeteria line.
That is overdoing.
He put another in a chokehold, knocking the student unconscious and causing a brain injury. In Pennsylvania, a student was tasered after an order ignoring an order to put down his cell phone. A 13-year-old student who suffers from asthma opened the window of a stuffy school bus where he was sitting. He was handcuffed and removed forcefully from the bus and crushed to the ground and hurt himself. You see, I do understand, you see, the teacher is to teach good behavior. There is a different way between the approach of a teacher to a child than the approach of a police officer who is basically trained not to negotiate or educate, but to use force to get a thing done.
Those incidents, for example, cutting through the cafeteria lines, right?
I mean,
or opening the school bus windows because she feels suffocated because of her asthma, right? So on and so forth. Those belong to discipline lines, discipline group, right? Discipline area. You can teach them by reiterating the rules, by emphasizing the rules, but you elevate it to criminality.
That's it.
And you tackle it as if their criminality is overdoing. Right. So now, first we say the society fails to encourage good deeds, Samaritan sympathy, right? And secondly, the society, instead of teaching the kids with rules or regulations, elevated it to criminality and tackle them as if they are criminals, right? Okay, this is the second. And what's wrong, thirdly?
So
You-
the
you-
whole,
there any- yeah.
you see, the whole approach, I do understand that kids are difficult to control. I do understand all that. But again, we are coming back to the basic rules and regulations of families. One of the main things wrong is that family life, in many instances, is not anymore what it used to be because the mothers and fathers are too stressed out to do the additional, very stressful job, by the way, to educate their children and show them the right way.
All right. Does that mean that we as a society fail to recognize that in between law, which emphasizes on punishing and deterring, there are rules which is based upon education and discipline,
Right.
right? So rather than doing the very bottom line to teach them to obey, we punish them to make them obey.
Right.
All right, which sometimes, or more often than not, causes rebound.
Yeah, because you know, very rarely these kids pose any credible danger to themselves or others. It's just kids. I mean, you have to understand children are children and not adults. You cannot you cannot apply the
Make
same
lots
rules
of sense.
to
Make
them.
lots of sense. My dear friends, my lovely audiences, with me is my good friend, Mr. Chris Nibby, a director though for Hollywood, focusing on films. He is an archivist himself, and he is a lover to the community. He cares about a lot the community. Now the subject today is for American schools. We have 98,000 schools altogether. For that many schools, arming the schools, arming teachers, is that something workable or not? Suppose it is, but culturally it is wrong, right? So with him, we're trying to get to the root causes of it. First, we found out that there are, well, anyway, let's take a short moment out. When we come back, we wrap it and we'll go further from there. Stay with us, please. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the show. Jack on the G&E TV with the G East West show. We try the East West show, cover as many aspects as we can to bring information that we believe positive to you to imbue your life. With me today, my good friend Chris Nibby, a Hollywood director, is sharing his political views overlooking the school situation of the United States after the shooting, in the aftermath of the school shooting, massive shooting though, when schools are armed on the campus with the police officers, when teachers bearing arm pieces whatsoever, of course, and are we still calling them schools a learning center instead of detention center? My take is that if we had to do something like that, we really have to do, because there is a difference between what we should do and what we have to, right? We have to do. Now, between we should do and we have to do, there's always another talk that we can find out within the range in the area of what had been wrong in the first place as the root causes, right? In finding root causes, we found out the schools, or we as a society, failed to recognize or even to not to encourage good deeds, right? And number two, we stopped recognizing sympathy. we use school rules to chastise kids instead. And number 3, we take lots of small encounters, misdemeanor disciplines issues as criminalities, and we tackle them with the law enforcement methodology, so that it gets lots of rebound, and people hate that. So, in other words, you elevate the problem to another level that you cannot even control. So,
Yes,
right?
because many of the kids are already coming from impoverished, disenfranchised, drug addicted, and abusive families. So the increasingly toxic climate in their school environment adds to their already confused state of mind. Do you understand? It's like a vicious cycle.
They're troubled already.
Yes.
They are troubled already. When they are confronted with troubles, they become more troubled.
Right.
And the more troubled mind makes more trouble. It goes on and on and on and on.
Instead of raising a generation of responsible citizens, the public schools seem to create young people who are being taught
You teach a bunch of problematic.
the hard way. It means to comply. What it means to comply, fear, and march in lockstep with government rules. And this is not the way a free, responsible society should function. I'm sorry.
And in the meantime, the school gives the birth to bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that the lots of shooters themselves are the ones bullied. I mean, being bullied.
Not only that, Jack, but you see, it is the same thing as the prison complex in America, which is totally overcrowded and is also a money-making machine, because in the end it's privatized and companies make big money with prisons. But you see, the fact is that most kids who get into the prison system are introduced to a life of crime, and when they get out, they're using what they heard and learned in prison, and it's a vicious circle. It's the same thing.
They went to another school.
Yeah, keep them out. To throw somebody in prison is also not the answer. So the whole situation of the society, again, we are back to society, is wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And it comes down to a conclusion that we would probably be rather safe to say the social fiber has been shaken or broken.
Broken.
The morality, the social morality has been corrupted. That's the thing. And 2 days ago, when I was talking with my friend Ken Hemming, he mentioned that there are lots of hatred there amongst people, rather than, as in the past, when compared, there are more trust than distrust. How do you comment on the trust and the distrust, please?
Yeah, because in a school environment, which is basically militarized, there is no trust. There's no trust between authority and those who are being under their control. And that's what's wrong. When we were young, we had a trustful friendship relationship with a teacher. The teacher would, those teachers who would beat us with a stick didn't have much of a success. Those who would say, look, it's better to do it this way, they would have much more success, because kids are born without an evil mind. They are getting an evil mind by their surroundings and by their experience.
And the environment to push them to see more of the bad side than the good side.
There is no racism among kids. Black, green, white, and blue kids all play together happily.
But we taught them.
But as they grow up, they are starting to realize, oh, he's different. And then people come and
am I right? I wonder if I'm right. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. In talking about the the social problem of the United States now, though, I would offer to go back to the early days. My saying, my look, my take is that discrimination has never left Americans.
Absolutely.
Do you
right.
agree?
Absolutely right. It's the Achilles heel. Racism is the Achilles heel of America forever.
I mean, the racial conflicts in between colors, and they are still there, right?
Yeah.
When all of a sudden it came into a time when a colored people can be the president of the United States, some overjoyed. The overjoyed are well exposed. And yet, after 80 years, when they are disappointed, right, when they did not see what they expected to see, and they get once again disappointed in another way, and there comes the other side say, hey, you see, this is what I meant. This is what I meant. And this gives a rebound from the colored people, and the colored people goes back, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And this, given to say 16 years already. 16 years would grow a 16-year boy or girl. That's a big man already, man or woman already. So now a concept is created, that's created and cultivated. Now you're talking about a bunch of these generation, that they are in school, right? And you're talking about their safety.
Yes,
So-
and in society, it's very interesting when you are in a society where there are people referred to as people of color. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why would a society constantly refer to people of color? Why would a society say, oh, he's a millionaire, but he's a first black millionaire? Why always is in this country this association with race? Why not just take the person for what it is and say, Mr. Jack is a successful man? Why do they say, oh, he's Chinese, he's successful? Why?
That itself
That
is a problem.
And that will never
It's
go
It's a
away.
root problem because people believe, well, certain people should do less.
That's it. And
Certain
you-
people should not be as good. And how come you're this good? Something like that.
Exactly. And you see, this is also this reference to people of color is in a way derogatory because as it so happens, a big number of people of color are poor.
Okay. Now you're talking about we should be colorblind.
That's it.
Right? We should be. And yet we fail to be that way. Because in at the very bottom of our mind, though, that thing still comes back quite
There's
so
a
often.
very fine.
Quite so often. When
Yeah.
there is any little environment or climate that echoes with it, though, and it comes out, it pops out.
Especially as far as black and brown people
And
are concerned.
then there's an extreme left and extreme right. One says the black life matter, the other says every life matter. Of course life matters. You guys say something which is very basic, 3-year-old knows. Right? A star is a star, and a spade is spade, an apple is an apple, orange is orange. And you guys talking about the very basic, and yet we're grown-ups. How stupid we are. So those are the things I'm talking about. With this whole thing being confirmed, and promoted, the kids learn. Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Right.
They learn. What they learn to be either extreme left or extreme right. In other words, they learn the extremeness. They learn the extremeness. You're talking about totalism. Talk about that. So that is the problem, my brother, rather than the school campus safety itself, which is only a tip of the iceberg.
Correct.
Do you think so?
Yes.
All right. Let's make a film. You are a film director. Why don't you make a film for that? And putting all the school together, make a big discussion about it.
Fine.
Yeah.
Where is the money?
Well, you're talking about money, okay? I hate money.
That costs money to do.
I know, but all right. There might be people who, among my audience, who might have the money though. If you really have the money, you call me. No. I'm not saying call me to give me the money. Call me to hook you up with him, right?
But you
Go
see,
ahead.
there is another thing.
Uh-huh.
It's a statistic which I read. I don't know the facts, but they say that by the time the average American young kid finishes their public school education, nearly 1 out of 3 will have been arrested. Nearly 40% of those young people who are arrested will serve time in a private prison, where the emphasis is making profits for large mega corporations who run these prisons, because the prison system is privatized now to a large degree. So the profit-driven private prison system in America is a financial incentive for yailing young people.
Well, like I said, the whole societal structure is wrong, and because the structure is following the culture. So we will trace it all the way back to culture.
So the kids become an easy target for the private prison industry.
I mean, in the culture,
which profits from criminalizing children, and many of them being people of color. This is not an incident. This is not a coincidence. This is a fact. And this whole negative approach is not making schools or communities any safer.
all
You
right.
cannot change
Okay,
this by posting
good.
armed soldiers around the school.
Thank you. That we're over time already, my dear friend.
As
I really
usual.
have to wrap it up. As usual, we're always over time. With me today, my dear friend Chris Nibby, director of Hollywood, is sharing a bunch of good ideas with us, and I believe that he and I will share a lot, except that we all together went to the social fiber of the society to find out that social fiber had been at stake, right? It is a culture that has been pushed to extremity, and then the kids, of course, monkey see, monkey learn. So, right, and we will see. For that kid, though, for the kid behavior on school, though, and there are incidents that happens, and for that occurrences, and enhanced law enforcement is on. The more on, the more rebound. The more rebound, the more on goes on and on and on and on. We are dropping into a trepidation of a bad circle.
Right.
Cycle. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. Anyway, let's take a wrap for this one, and we will be back on this one too, because it looks that we just touch the stem of the problem, right? So thank you very much for watching, my dear friend, and to Chris, thank you very much.
谢谢你，非。